Hello and welcome along to the latest episode of Utter Punts. Now, you may have noticed that something slightly strange is going on, and it turns out that I am totally incapable of reading my own calendar. So when the message went out earlier this week, what night are we all free? I went, yeah, definitely free on Thursday. It turns out I wasn't free on Thursday, and in fact, I'm here at Old Trafford for Manchester United's game against PAOK in the Europa League. So, this is hence this get-up, hence these seats, hence the lovely Coles 4104 lit microphone and the crowd noise that you can hear in the background. There are plenty of journalists sort of milling around inside the press box. I'm sure that you'll hear them because, well, if we're being completely honest, the Greek journalists are quite loud. They're quite loud. It is also the reason that we haven't got Ollie on the podcast because we wanted to avoid a diplomatic incident. Right, let's talk NFL, shall we? I'm not getting away with that one. That's coming back to haunt me, I guarantee it. Right, let's talk NFL, shall we? Plenty to go at. Trade deadline closed this week, I think, so there'll be plenty these two want to say about that. And again, some pretty interesting results at the weekend. Dave, what caught your eye? Where do you want to start, mate?
Well, the only game that I was interested in was... No, I'm joking. There were lots of good games this weekend. I think the thing that struck me the most, though, was what happened to the Packers is probably what struck me the most.
It's really interesting, this, Dave, because our friend Dan sent me a message saying, I really fancy the Packers tonight. I really fancy the Packers. First game outdoors for the Lions all season long. It's cold and wet and windy and rainy and horrible in Green Bay. I reckon they'll probably get turned over, and that's not what happened.
It really is not what happened. Jared Goff, I think, completed the first... It was something ridiculous, like the first 17, 18 passes of the game. Even though it was raining, it was greasy out there. And then after the game, Packers coaches came out and said, well, you know, Detroit... No, it wasn't Packers coaches, sorry. It was a Packers guy on local Packer radio who came out and said, well, to be honest with you, the Detroit Lions are built for this kind of weather, which strikes me as a little bit of a damning indictment upon the Packers. But Jordan Love doesn't look right. It's his first season with a big contract, and I'm pretty sure the regression there is only due to injuries. Jim?
100% agree. I think he's really struggled. I think there was rumours he could miss this week's game. It might have been better if he did, if they had a suitable backup. I think it would. I mean, Malik Wills has not looked too bad when he's played for the Packers, to be fair, and I think they might have been in a better situation had they trotted out him as opposed to a one-legged Jordan Love in this situation. I think the Packers saying that the Detroit Lions are built for this weather is an interesting take, bearing in mind Wisconsin's one of the wettest, coldest states in the US. So, yes, Detroit is of similar ilk, but that's not really an excuse you can use for the offensive output that you put forward. The defensive breakdowns that occurred for the long Detroit touchdown. And overall, just another underwhelming performance by the Packers, I think, is probably the best way to sum that up.
Why do we... Let's just go back to Jordan Love for a second. Both of you agreeing that he doesn't quite look right. Is it just consequence that the big contract arrived and he doesn't look quite as hungry and quite as... playing for a big money deal that he did before, or am I being a total cynic?
His heart, mate. I mean, it did his knee, and I expected him to be out most of the season, to be honest, the way he went down. And it came back quickly, but he's wearing what looks like some kind of armour underneath his bottoms whenever he's playing. And then he did his groin very early on as well. He's just injured. There's nothing he can do, I don't think, at the moment, other than try and play through the pain. But I think the coaches have to look at it and go, we've got a backup quarterback who has started 2 games and he's 2-0. He brings a different dimension to our offense. He's nowhere near as accomplished at reading opposition defences as Jordan Love appears to be. And he's not in the same league of pocket passer. But at the same time, they're 2-0 whenever he's played, and not only that, they've looked comfortable in those games. And I think they're doing Jordan Love a disservice in terms of not making him stay off the field until he's at least 90%. But right now, I think he's functioning with one leg pretty much.
I agree with you. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those stories that breaks early in the off season, that Jordan Love has got a partially torn groin muscle or something along those lines, and he's been pain managed through the majority of the season, because obviously that happened in week one. It got re-aggravated last couple of weeks ago, I think it was. So it really wouldn't surprise me if it came out that Jordan Love played through the pain, which a lot of quarterbacks do, admittedly, with mixed success. But it's usually a fairly good explanation for why a good performing quarterback the prior year underperforms the following year. There's recent history of this in terms of Baker Mayfield at the Browns, and then subsequently he was on fire for a season and then got hit in the second game, and then they replaced him with everyone's favourite quarterback. So I think it's just a case of it's injury. There's also a little bit of a lack of weapons. We didn't understand them investing the money in Josh Jacobs to replace Aaron Jones at running back. Their running game hasn't been anywhere near where it has been over the last few years. And when you've got a mobile quarterback who's had probably 60-70% of his mobility taken away from him, to have no run game to speak of, one and a half receivers in your starting lineup, no easy dump offs to a top end tight end, I think he's just on a hiding to nothing. I think the overall the Packers offense as a whole this season has underperformed, but I do think that's predominantly due to Jordan Love's injury issues.
Yeah, I mean, the Lions obviously proved themselves to be a force to be reckoned with, whatever weather. And didn't they get Zadarius Smith as well from the Browns?
They did. I think they're probably the best team in the NFL from an all-around... And I think we said this last week or the week before. From an all-around offense, defense, special teams, big playability, exciting to watch. I think the Lions are ticking most of those boxes at the moment, and have done for most of the first 9 weeks of the season, to be honest. So I think they don't quite get their... They're not in the Chiefs League of missed calls yet. That would probably be the only thing to make it even more entertaining when they're playing these teams. So, blatantly obvious false starts being missed, illegal formations on every other play that they don't call, amongst other things. But you never know. If Detroit Lions get to the Super Bowl and maybe win it this year, then next year they'll get those favourable calls as well. And we can all hate them as much as we all hate the Chiefs.
Oh, I already do.
Yeah, and I mean, they're still unbeaten as well, the Chiefs, aren't they? And they're looking like the team to beat again. That's about as much time as I want to spend on them. Shall we just move thought process on to what's going on at the Jags? Because I'm not quite sure I anticipated the Eagles beating them the way that they did. And also, we've had a bit of breaking news today that Trevor Lawrence looks like he might be struggling for the weekend as well.
Yeah, the Jaguars are a bit of a... I'm a little bit surprised at how poor the Jaguars have been this year. But I think that's probably more reflective of organisational culture than it is talent levels, because I think the Jaguars actually have a reasonably talented squad. I mean, they've got some deficiencies on defence, especially in the secondary. And they lost one of their top receivers, Calvin Ridley, over to the Titans in the off season. But I think overall the Jaguars been very disappointing. I was expecting better out of Doug Peterson. I was expecting better out of Trevor Lawrence as well. But yeah, I mean, to go, it feels like and it smells like Doug Peterson's in trouble to me, and he feels a little bit like a dead man walking. As Jaguars head coach.
So I think the major issue here is it might be Doug Pederson or Trevor Lawrence, because if Mac Jones comes in against the Vikings and gets something of a result for him, summoning for an injured Trevor Lawrence, that might give Doug a stay of execution, and then the blame might be being pointed directly towards the QB, which basically could lead to a point where the the Jags are in a position where they have to make a choice between their head coach and their QB. Now we know the financial commitment which counts is to the QB. And it would appear that Pedersen's kind of lost that locker room. There was a little bit of hope coming through in the last game where prior to this one where the Jags only lost narrowly, but the Eagles absolutely destroyed them. They completely failed to stop the run.
But yeah, they only won by 5 points. That's
the deficiency with the Eagles, I think.
I'd like to add that now the listeners are really getting the true feel for the atmosphere at Old Trafford. The previous noise that you heard was piped in by Liam to make it sound like people actually care about that team.
Yeah,
but this is, and here it is.
Turn tape off, Liam. Turn tape off.
Yeah,
that's what I did.
What happened? Did you score?
Yeah, watch it, you. Funnily enough, I think this microphone's given up the ghost, which is probably a good thing. It means that you lot can't hear me. It does mean that with the left shoulder injury that he's picked up, Trevor Lawrence, that going into the game against the Vikings at the weekend, then he probably won't play. That benefits you and the Vikings, Dave, doesn't it?
Is it a left shoulder injury? Yeah.
Yeah.
He might well play then, because they tend to try and play through injuries to the non-throwing shoulder, which is Baker Mayfield could testify that's not a good idea.
No, and I think the Jaguars would be probably it'd be a good idea for them to not subject Trevor Lawrence to that Vikings defense. They obviously haven't been as as hot as they were in the first sort of 5-6 weeks of the season. They played a couple of tough games, good offenses, but the Jaguars don't have a great offensive line, and the heat that the Vikings defensive coordinator likes to dial up. I think Trevor Lawrence could end up with injuries to both shoulders, both legs, a concussion, and more to boot, to be honest with you, the way that Jaguars offense runs. So and the interesting point that they have made about Matt Jones, I think that could be an interesting one, and I think it could potentially throw the Vikings defense off if Matt Jones did come in for Trevor Lawrence, and I think it may actually make it a bit more of a competitive game because of the lack of ability to plan for that, and obviously with it happening so late in the week. So if I was the Jaguars, I think Doug Peterson's in a difficult position because I don't think he's got the luxury of being able to go, well, I'm going to rest my starting quarterback who, let's make no bones about it. From what we've seen in the NFL, Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback than Matt Jones. But at the same time, that's a $250 million investment from the franchise. The Jaguars season isn't in a great spot. They're probably not going to make the playoffs. Is it worth trotting him out against the top 5 defense that could literally tee off on him, especially the way the Vikings start putting up 14, 21 points in the first quarter quite often.
Not the last game though.
No, but I'm not sure you want to have an injured quarterback sitting in shotgun with the Vikings pass rushers teeing off on him on every other play. So it's interesting. Again, Jaguars season's done. I think I was surprised they didn't sell off a couple more pieces at the trade deadline, to be honest. But yeah, I think the Vikings will defeat them, and I think it's only because they played a fairly poorly coached Philadelphia team that the score flattered them significantly at the weekend.
At points, Nick Sirianni didn't know what his own team were doing. When they were going for 2 points, he didn't understand what was happening. But at least that's what it looked like. But
at least we got to see a Saquon Barkley, 360-degree hurdle over a Jaguars defender that just made it was so
it
good.
Looked.
It just made him look so bad.
It looked like a wrestling match where someone's just come off the ropes and he's hurdling someone.
Yeah,
the timing on that. So if you want proof that the NFL is scripted, I mean, come on, look at what Saquon did there.
You say that, but he waited until he was wearing the Kelly Greens back in the 90s original jersey before he decided to do a 360-degree hurdle over someone or other. Look, We're going to come back, continue this conversation. I want to talk about Chuba Hubbard, and of course Jim's going to bring something to the party as well. All of the trade deadline stuff coming a little bit later in the pod too. We will be back after a message from our sponsors. If you're anything like us at Utter Punts, we love the fantasy games surrounding the NFL, but sometimes they're a bit too focused on their American audiences. That's why we were blown away when the Fantasy Game Day app rolled into town, a weekly fantasy game with player values in pounds totally dedicated to the NFL's UK audience. There's insights and analysis and plenty of opportunity to compete with your friends, but the best bit, weekly cash prizes. Use code PUNTS when you sign up for a free entry after you play your first week. Yeah, welcome back to Utter Punts. We are talking NFL, loads and loads to talk about. The trade deadline's thrown up some great talking points. We're going to talk Chuba Hubbard in just a minute because he signed a whacking great contract extension. But Jim, what's caught your eye in the NFL this week, mate?
I think the trade deadline was maybe a little bit quieter than maybe some people thought.
We hoped anyway. We thought
for sure.
Some real spice, but nothing.
I mean, in terms of the best move that was made this week in the trade at the trade deadline would be Marshawn Lattimore going from the Saints to the Commanders. I'm a big fan of Marshawn Lattimore at cornerback. I think a couple of years ago he was one of the top cover corners in the NFL. I think injuries have taken their toll on him and he's got old a little bit quicker than you might expect. But I also think he probably needed a refresh in system that he'll definitely get with the Commanders. Obviously, he's been playing under Dennis Allen at the Raiders, who we all know got canned earlier this week.
Who could have seen that coming when they...
The only head coach to be canned halfway through a season twice.
Oh, where was he at previously?
He was the Raiders head coach and he got canned after a London game.
Wow. What a record for have. Should put it on his tombstone.
And my Cleveland Browns play the New Orleans Saints the week after our bye week. So that means that we're going to lose by at least 25 points.
Wow.
So
have you seen what's happening with the Saints with Derek Carr?
Yeah,
his unpopular, the unpopular view towards him held by many former players, including Michael Thomas, who does tend to sound off on everybody.
He absolutely ripped him apart after that game at the weekend.
He was bad though. He looked bad.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with Derek Carr as a quarterback. I mean, we're digressing from the original point here, but I think it's worth touching on that. You know, I when the Saints picked up Derek Carr, I mean, one, I didn't really think they needed him, and I thought they'd have probably been better off resetting through the draft, especially with their salary cap hell that they've had to navigate for 3 years and will have to navigate for another 5 years or so. But he's come in and I think he's the worst version of Derek Carr than what was at the Raiders, which is a big fear for people. And when you're paying him the amount of money that he's being paid, I think he's a $35 million a year quarterback, and I think that's just And look, I think he's probably in his last season with the Saints, and that'll be that. Again, I was a little bit surprised the Saints weren't sellers at the deadline, but I think that's probably got something to do with the personnel turnover at head coach and things like that, and actually not wanting to completely tank the season, although I think it's probably in their best interest to do so.
They can't afford more dead cap.
No, and I think that's it. But yeah, obviously with the trade of Lattimore to the Commanders, I think that was a need for the Commanders, so a good trade there. Zadarius Smith going to the Lions from the Browns. I was fairly happy with the return, but then when you look at the cap implications of that trade for the Browns, who are still on the hook for his entire cap hit this year and his entire cap hit next year, which is $14 million. The deal doesn't look that good when you basically got a 5th and a 6th round pick in exchange. So I think the Lions won that trade with the Browns. Zadarius Smith's got 5 sacks this season and a good pressure rate, and he looks like the Zadarius Smith that was previously at the Vikings and the Packers, as opposed to what we've seen when he's dropped off when he's had an injury. So Lions won that one. But other than that, it was, like I say, it was fairly quiet and I felt a little bit indifferent towards it, to be honest. I wasn't even...
The most astounding one that I saw wasn't a big deal. It was just, I couldn't believe the cost that was invested in a particular player.
I know who this is.
Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah.
With Mingo, Jonathan Mingo, I think it is, from
a
Carolina.
4th rounder.
More than what got paid for Hopkins.
Yep. A very similar deal to the Amari Cooper to the Bills piece. To be fair, I mean, I know that the brand's got a conditional third on that basis, which could be a fourth. And the Cowboys straight up traded a fourth for someone I can't remember the last time he was even mentioned on the stat sheet, let alone being a wide receiver that demanded a fourth round pick in trade. With one of the worst teams in the NFL who were looking to sell off assets, so the Panthers won that.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Dallas paid for it. It's almost like Jerry Jones is trying to undo the mistakes from the summer, where, well, they did nothing. And he's even gotten the position wrong, which is their position of need. Had they traded a fourth rounder for a running back, I'd have understood. But you've just lost Dak Prescott, presumably for at least 4 weeks. Although I have heard that apparently he managed to tear his hamstring slightly off the bone, and I think that's actually the rest of the season, if they're being honest.
Wow.
So you then trade a fourth round pick for a wide receiver. I mean, I suppose it's Cooper Rush's opportunity to stake a claim for getting a contract next season.
He's not a horrible quarterback, and to be honest, from what I've seen from him, I've been reasonably impressed. But Dak Prescott gets a bit of a raw deal, to be honest, as the Cowboys quarterback. He's very similar to Tony Romo in a lot of aspects, and Tony Romo got a raw deal towards the end. Obviously, they've just signed him to a new contract, so it's not the end. But the Cowboys losing to the Falcons and Dave's favourite player, Kirk Cousins, it always brings a smile to my face.
It did make me laugh though, seeing Kirk Cousins light up a Zimmer defense. He got sacked a couple of times, but you could tell that Zimmer was trying to get after him and he was getting picked apart on the blitz.
I love it. Look, boys, I need to bust a groove very shortly. So before I do, Dave sent me an email a little bit earlier on, and we weren't going to do this, but it feels appropriate that we should do this given the numbers. So earlier this season, we started our stock market game again, where essentially we picked a load of teams to do better than they did last season, and for every position better off that they currently are, we get a point. Okay? I'm going to give you the leaderboard with minus 26 points. Ollie.
Oh,
Ollie.
yes.
The gut feeling on the Raiders, mate.
Yeah. And he's also got the Ravens, hasn't he? That's absolutely killed him off. That's not been an awful lot of fun. Next up, in third position, with minus 4 points, Big Dave Keane.
Yeah.
Big Dave Keane with minus 4 points. What's caused you minus 4, mate?
Well, to be honest with you, I mean, a couple of teams that you look at and you think, well, the talent's there, and then it turns out that I should have just looked at the coaching staff. The Jaguars are killing me.
Yeah,
I hate you.
Yeah,
the Bucks will be all right there. They're 4 and 5, and it's injury related. The Jags don't even have that excuse. So
in second place, and yet to do a podcast this season with 0 points, is Dan, and nothing has felt more appropriate than not leaving the point from which he started, and still being the second best out of everybody on the podcast.
Who's Dan again? I can't even remember who Dan is. Does anyone?
I don't think you two have actually met.
Dan, the ones that you're trying. Dan is the one that you are trying and failing to replicate, Jim. You keep trying, Sunshine. He'll come back when you kind of get to his level.
Wow!
Aren't you about to make an announcement as to where this game is at, Lee? It doesn't really fit, does it?
Look, I have absolutely walked myself into that trap on purpose, Dave. And the fact that you've had to point it out has just ruined my joke, hasn't it? You've absolutely just trampled all over my joke, because leading this with 30 points. 30. He is 30 points clear of his next nearest rival. He's 56 points ahead of Ollie. 56. It's Big Jim Sumner.
It's almost like I might know what I'm talking about. But anyway, only joke. Let's be honest. That's because I bought very low on a couple of teams that couldn't get any worse. So I am taking all the credit, and I'm happy to take all of the credit.
I mean, you have got a couple in there that are costing you as well, which is a little bit strange. So, like, the Cleveland Browns are currently negative 18, but it's been absolutely trampled all over by the fact the Washington Commanders are like plus 27. I also just a couple of little winners in there as well. Look, boys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Unfortunately, my day job is calling, so I'm going to disappear. You two keep having a chat. How about I leave you starting with Chuba Hubbard, who's just signed a $33 million contract extension. Dave?
And we will definitely discuss that after we discuss the fact that I'm beating Ollie by 56 points.
Yeah, you talk about that. I'll see you later. In a bit,
Cheers.
boys.
In a bit.
So, yeah, 56 points. That's a lot.
It's a lot. I mean, it is only based on a snapshot from this week. Like previously, Ollie has actually been in the lead on this league, but we weren't looking at that point.
It doesn't suit my narrative
No,
either.
not at all. It is also based on record up at the top end of the division right now. So, for example, I've got 0 points from having picked the Chiefs because they won the Super Bowl last year and they're currently in first position. But if the Chiefs lose in the playoffs, they become a huge loss for me automatically. So it's still very much all to play for. But yeah, the Raiders haven't done Ollie any good. I think we called it at the time with a gut feeling thing. Oh.
Do you know what? I think it's just probably karma for trying to offer 1 first-round pick and Jordan Addison for Myles Garrett, to be perfectly honest with you.
Did you see the catch from Addison at the weekend?
I did.
Diving one-handed in the back of the end zone. I mean, credit to you, lad. Get in there. I mean, keep doing great things and make it even harder for people to want to trade. Yeah.
For Myles Garrett, yeah. But yeah, I think Liam left us with the Chuba Hubbard deal. 4 years, $33.2 million.
Well, it's an overpay. Seems a little bit strange, but it also is the kind of thing that you do when you're looking to have a young quarterback. So maybe Bryce Young isn't done at the Panthers.
I was surprised that they did it just on the basis that they drafted a running back in the second round this year.
A good running back too.
Jonathan Brooks from Texas.
Yeah.
He was the top running back on a lot of people's boards. So I think to be 9 weeks into a season and now choosing to pay what you were hoping was going to be your backup running back, $8.5 million a year to lead your offense, that's either you're throwing in the towel on your second round pick from 9 weeks ago, or it's just
they're following the Lions model, mate.
Potentially, and running back by committee is obviously a popular piece. It doesn't work for me. I think a team should always have a lead back in that situation. But, it does work for teams. We see it with the Lions. Maybe we'll see it with the Panthers when Brooks is back at full speed. But $33.2 million. At first, I read it as a 3-year deal, and at which point I nearly fell off my chair that someone was prepared to pay him that much. It was slightly then obviously diluted by the fact it was a 4-year deal. But I mean, when you look at the terms of the deal, I think it had $15 million guaranteed. So they've basically guaranteed him 2 years on the roster from next year. By which point I think he'll probably be hitting 27, 28, which is usually the end for a running back. So it's really a 2-year contract. Was it necessary to pay what you were hoping would be your backup running back $8 million a year when the Chiefs have signed someone like Kareem Hunt for about $2 million this year? And there's been other examples
off the street
of that.
though, right? And you always do want to keep things in house.
People get lucky, but we've often discussed how you can pick up a good running back in the starting running back in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, or an undrafted free agent in some cases. Some of the best running backs that we've seen in the league. Adrian Peterson, was it him who was undrafted, or did he go in the first round?
He wasn't undrafted. He was a top.
No, it was the Texans running back. I can't remember who the Texans running
Jamal
back.
Charles.
He was one, but that was one. There was another one. I can't remember who it was.
Third rounder.
But there's plenty of.
That was Chiefs. Sorry. You've got Mixon at the Texans, who was
undrafted.
Second round.
Second round yet.
No, was he third? It was a weird draft, wasn't it? Because he fell due to what happened with a young lady at the college, and then got knocked out in his very first NFL game, which seemed to be like someone sending a message. But again, you don't hear anything bad about him these days. Hopefully, he's put all of that idiocy behind him and nastiness. But yeah, he's doing great things for the Texans now. Who was it?
He's retired now. I can't remember. We'll probably end up coming back to it next week with a triumphant piece. I mean, to be honest, the fact that I'm winning, but beating Ollie by 56 points is, is all that's on my mind at the moment. To be
You should
honest with you, so
send him a message. I mean, it's the way it works out, right? Basically, you can only have up to 30 points up and down. So if you're moving up, the likelihood is someone's moving down, and your total is a combination of mine and Ollie's score, basically, but reversed. Well,
yeah. But I mean, let's be honest.
Dan's sitting there on zeros, and at the moment, to be honest with you, the Falcons are what's keeping him afloat.
I mean, I'm not. I'm pretty sure there's not going to be many people that are missing Ollie from this podcast. But for those of you that are, he's currently travelling overnight for an eye test, which might help him next year in this game when he can actually see who he's actually picking, and he won't be 56 points behind me. Love you, Ollie. See you Saturday, mate. But yeah,
You will. He'll be back on Saturday, I think.
but yeah, no. Chuba Hubbard, to wrap up on him. Overpay, agree. Decent running back. I think he's. I've seen a lot worse. Was it necessary? No, it wasn't. Was it indicative of the Carolina Panthers having absolutely no plan whatsoever? Yes, it really was. To stick with the Panthers, Bryce Young, first game back in the starting lineup, played pretty well from what I saw. As well as Bryce Young has been able to play behind his offensive line and with his lack of weapons. But at the same time, I saw an interesting stat after the game that he had a better passer rating than CJ Stroud. He had a better passer rating than Jordan Love. He had a better passer rating, I think, than Justin Herbert. And I think he had a better passer rating than possibly like Tua or something. I can't remember. It was another big quarterback.
Tua played well over the weekend. I think he had an 80.7 passer rating, so I don't think it's over him. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when we look at the other games from the weekend, I think the best game of the weekend was probably that Miami Buffalo game. That went right. It was really, really good, and watched all of that, enjoyed it. Disappointed the Bills won with their walk-off field goal in the end, because I thought they just about self-destructed enough that the Dolphins could actually do something, and then it was actually the Dolphins that self-destructed. So that's how that went. But yeah, then we look across the slate. One thing I think we should talk about is where the Chicago Bears are at with their season. And
what's gone wrong there?
I was going to say, I've seen your eyes light up with this, so I'm going to give this to you to start off with, and then we can celebrate our mutual quarterback evaluation of Caleb Williams together.
So, I mean, I should probably have led with this, but I figured it was kind of nice to leave until a bit later in the podcast. But it was probably my favourite moment of the weekend. It's now been somewhat mitigated by the explanations which have come out. But on one play, Caleb Williams is scrambling around in the backfield, trying to make something happen. He'd missed an initial pass, and DJ Moore was coming on a comeback route, trying to give him an opening down the line. And basically, at the moment where we saw Caleb move away from him move away from him when he was trying to assess where to throw the ball, he just carried on walking off the pitch. And didn't even turn back to watch the play. And
just for the record, the explanation that DJ Moore gave for that was absolute tripe.
What, do you mean his injury?
Yeah, it was this apparent injury that happened despite him walking off mid-play with absolutely no limp and looking really, really frustrated.
But he had a limp straight after, walking up and down the touchline. I mean, like, obviously we have to trust him here. We can't possibly accuse him of, like, trying to...
No, there's absolutely no accusations going on here, but just observations.
No. And then, of course, one of their star players, I can't remember if it was him again, DJ Moore, was asked whether or not Eberflus has lost the dressing room. And he said, I really want to say that he hasn't. Which is not the same as saying he hasn't.
Yeah, that's not a ringing endorsement, is it? I think. And where are the Bears at now? Are they 3 and 5?
No, they're not. They're 4 and 3. Or have they just gone to 4 and 4 if they haven't had their bye? No, they haven't had their. I think they're 4 and 4. They've lost their last 2. In fact, they've lost their last 2 after they came back from the bye, which is disappointing. But we have said this, like, the expectations on Caleb Williams are not fair, and the longer those expectations are there, and the tension is ratcheted up on him, he's not somebody who is displaying what I would deem to be a well-rounded personality. He himself is expressing frustration. He expressed frustration at the end of the game they lost via Hail Mary, which is brilliant. And he's clearly running around trying to make things happen, but what he's not doing is getting the ball and hitting his first read, and like he should be. You need to establish a quick game in order to keep the defence guessing. If all you're going to do is bail out of the pocket and scramble around looking to make something happen, you're going to end up throwing picks that way, because people will only rush. The chaos that can be caused just by sending 3 rushers. In fact, on that play we were talking about with DJ Moore, there were only 3 rushers.
Yep.
And it was pure chaos, and that just shouldn't happen when you're only rushing 3. So their O-line looks suspect. Their GM is a former O-lineman himself, who's resisted the temptation to fire the head coach, despite the fact, and we've discussed this many times, there's a way to build a team, and when you are looking to build a team around a young QB, you have to have a head coach who's going to dedicate themselves to making that QB work. And you want that to be someone who's got experience running an offense or coaching QBs.
What I really don't understand from a Bears perspective is that you decided that a mobile quarterback who runs around and struggles with getting off his first read was not the future of your franchise in the summer.
Drafted one who showed that on his college.
Traded him away. And you drafted Caleb Williams, who at points but so we're clear, you were drafting Caleb Williams for his pocket passing, which wasn't one of his strengths that we saw on tape when we were evaluating him for the draft. He was a mobile quarterback who had probably, I think the perception was he had better awareness.
He used to bail out, and he
was playing against jelly babies in college. Like, let's bear that in mind.
Every single time he played against a ranked defense, what happened?
He got destroyed.
I don't like. Honestly, I think there's something to be said for signing up with the right sports agency, because certain clients of certain agencies don't seem to get the same scrutiny that other players do, and I feel like that's because if you sign up for the best agency, they're going to protect you. And the narratives which come out, you see stars who are in the media who are signed to the same agency coming out and promoting these players. I am so confused. There was no scrutiny of Caleb Williams when he was under pressure every time he played against us.
Well, I think I shared with you at some point prior to the draft the stats around the stats against him when he was playing ranked teams versus some of the jelly babies that he was playing in college, and the drop off and his ability to operate under pressure was not good. And I think that's definitely translated over to the NFL. I actually think, from what I've seen, I think Caleb Williams has been actually better in some respects than I was expecting him to be.
I concur.
I think
concur.
He's looked a competent quarterback, and he's looked a good quarterback on a couple of occasions this year. But, I mean, the baffling decision is, obviously, you jettison Justin Fields for, a 6th round pick to the Steelers. You kept the head coach that effectively destroyed Justin Fields' development and didn't, he's a mobile quarterback. It didn't work with Eberflus at the Bears. So what are you going to do? Let's go and draft another mobile quarterback and waste the first year of his development under the same head coach. There's no excuse. They've got, I think the Vikings have got the best 1-2 punch at wide receiver in the league. But if you actually looked at the 1-2-3 punch at the Bears, that's
pretty special.
There's nothing that compares to that in the league.
Is it a Dunze they've got?
Yeah, they've got Roma Dunze, they've got Keenan Allen, and they've got DJ Moore that we spoke about.
Keenan Allen has turned into a drop machine. I don't know what that's about. DJ Moore walks off the field. The other guy's a rookie. And when you look at it, you have to be asking what has led to this. And I think it's just a complete disjointedness on offense, because the O-line can't do the things that they're being asked to do in order to allow Caleb Williams the time he wants to do the things that he wants to do. Earlier this season, they were getting away with some quick plays. They were basically, he was taking the snap and he was flinging it out to the flat straight away, or hitting a screen game. And that was giving him, if you like, that speed that you need on the centre. But we said it. He'd never taken a snap on the centre at college either. Like he did everything out of shotgun, and there's definitely a learning curve to that. And when you also need to learn the art of selling a run game, and that is something which isn't easy to pick up. Like Kirk is awful at it. As
They
can
have
be seen by
nothing
the
in
lack
the
of
run game because of what's happening because of the lack of quality offensive play calling. It's allowing teams to stack the box and shut the run game down, and then the Bears are often playing from behind. And then you're putting the game on Caleb Williams' shoulders from under centre. You've also lost the benefit of play action, which is usually a young quarterback's best friend in that situation. Takes pressure off the O-line as well. So that they're in a situation where you're now asking Caleb Williams to do something that he wasn't really drafted. It wasn't a strength when he was drafted, and when he's going to his college offensive sort of tendencies, those aren't working for him because he's playing. Like we said, the ranked opponents versus the second and third tier teams. There were second and third tier teams in the NFL. But if you put those in comparison to college football, they're all elite defenses with elite speed, elite playmakers. People are getting paid $20-30 million to try and decapitate Caleb Williams. That's so we're clear. And I just think that's just it's been a tough first season for him, and I think the best thing that could happen for him would be for Eberflus to be fired and then to take the Lions Ben Johnson as their new head coach to guide his development, because the work he's done with Jared Goff has been absolutely second to none. On Dan Campbell's staff at the Lions, so I think that'd be where I'd be going if I was them. We're not as good at this, but do we need to have a word with our sponsors?
Here at Utter Punts, we love watching the NFL with friends, and in our opinion, there's no better place to grab a bite to eat and watch the NFL than Beer Keller in Manchester. The burgers are massive, there's loads of HD screens, the wings are great, and there's a superb choice of drinks behind the bar too. Most importantly for us though, the people are brilliant, like-minded NFL fans who want to enjoy the game and have a laugh. It's definitely one of the best venues to watch your favourite team in.
Yay, sponsors! I hope you all enjoyed that. Done. Carry on.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that's the Bears. I don't think anyone's disappointed to see where they are. The Commanders, obviously, good show. Where else are we? We've got the Raiders against the Bengals. That was starting to look a bit like a cricket score for a while until a couple of late touchdowns from the Raiders. I think their head coach could be in trouble. Anthony Pierce. I think we could see him under pressure.
Anthony Pierce, yeah. Desmond Ridder came in at QB for them.
He did. They benched Gardner Minshew, I think, at points. And Ridder's not showing himself to be a competent quarterback in the NFL. So I think when you're
a stud though, he's another one of like. Dan,
he's an athletic stud.
Dan, you own 0 on the game, but Liam's coming out fighting on your behalf. It was just reminding me of a couple of things. Let's talk about Dan's
Well, he
QBs
called me a poor man's Dan. That stung. I'm not going to lie. And the overarching victory that I feel that I am annihilating everybody in the game, especially only by 56 points, just to note again. But there's no poor man's Dan here.
Let's just do this. I'm going to name a quarterback, and you tell me whether or not Dan thought he was going to be good or bad. Okay.
Okay.
Trey Lance.
I think Dan probably liked him.
Him. Oh, I just swore. Loved him. There you go. Edit the other bit back. And then let's see who else is there.
Just on the Trey Lance piece, I don't know how you could love Trey Lance. I think he played 12 games.
He had a big arm, and the 49ers wanted him.
Yeah, every quarterback in America has got a big arm apart from...
NFL.com said he'd be good.
Right, okay. Got you.
Who else is another QB that Dan likes? Oh, no, here's a wide receiver. Tell me whether or not you think this guy's good. Rashad Bateman.
At the Ravens?
Yeah.
I think he probably liked him.
I really liked him, if I'm honest. Dan didn't. Dan Dan had an alternative wide receiver in mind in that draft.
Who is that?
Cornelius. Kadarius Toney.
You mean the practice squad, the Browns practice squad, Kadarius Toney, who has been through 3 NFL teams in his first 4 years and now can't even make an active roster?
I mean, it's only 2 mistakes that he's made that I can think of in like 3 years we've been doing this. But like, yeah, those Dan.
But he also liked Caleb Williams, and we didn't. So
did we get an opinion on that? I don't know. He might not.
well, let's be honest. He's not here to give us an opinion. So to be honest, we can just continue to stack up our victories over Dan in terms of our player evaluation skills and just attendance. To be fair, so we're definitely leading the way.
I mean, what Dan does do, what he's got to have, like the stock market game is the only thing I'm aware of that he's actually defending this year, and he's done it via proxy. Liam being with proxy, right? Like, if he wins a fantasy football league, that's it. He's gone. He quits. If he wins a fantasy game day thing, he gets 1 victory and he quits. And like, I mean, it's a bit of a trend. It doesn't stay in the pocket.
But yeah, a bit like Trey Lance, to be fair. And Caleb Williams is 2 quarterbacks shining lights, but there we go.
Dan's probably sitting there fuming about this, and in reality, we just want you to come back so we can say hello and have a chat, Dan.
Yeah, come on, Dan.
Yeah, come give it some back. What else went on? We should probably think about finishing up. We don't need.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered most of the important games. To be fair, I think just looking at the slate, the Browns got spanked again, but we don't need to talk about that because we can just literally rinse and repeat from 7 out of the last 9 weeks, to be honest, because it was all of the same sort of levels of failings. Unfortunately, the real Jameis Winston turned up this week for the Browns and threw 3 interceptions and had 3 more dropped. But
do you know what? No one gives a crap about your fantasy team, but I did pick up Jameis for his first week and he was brilliant. And then I was looking at it and I was like, but it's Jameis Winston. He's going to turn into a pumpkin. So I dropped him for the last game. Wow, I felt so smug.
And that's it. I think when we play the Saints next week, he'll be back in, and I think he'll probably do quite well. Yeah, it's the Jameis Winston roller coaster.
It is literally a roller coaster. You've got the bye this weekend, haven't you?
Yeah, there's a bye for the Browns this week, and then it's the Saints the following week. I mean, the other games on the slate, what have we got? We had the Rams v Seattle. I'm not really sure anyone really cares about either of those teams. I mean that in the nicest way. It's just a case of they're stuck in mediocrity a little bit now.
The Rams are on their way back through, though. Did they win that game?
The Rams won 26-20.
No, but what's interesting with them is the fact that they got Puka and cut back, but Puka got himself kicked out of the game for punching someone. Well, that person completely deserved it. So, well done.
Completely agree.
Yeah, I've no idea why you got kicked out of the game. Maybe instead of looking at the crime, have a look and see what caused the crime and punish the people who cause the issues, rather than people who get caught within the, shall we say, symptom of what is happening. I mean, it can be. It's not just games, is it? That can be referred to real life here. So there we go. Yeah.
And I mean, other one. I mean, the Bucks against the Chiefs. The Chiefs won. The Chiefs had about 15 no calls on their offensive, on their offense as usual. Again, we could probably just rinse and repeat this for what's happened for the last 2.5 seasons.
Are they going to let them go 17-0 so they can have him as the most successful franchise in history, the only team to have ever gone 17-0? Because
it sure smells like that.
I mean, what? Why?
The false start penalties that don't get called on.
They line up illegally often as well.
The false starts and the illegal formations. If you sit there and watch a Chiefs game, which I'd encourage anyone who hasn't done that before to do, because you'll see one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in Mahomes when he's on form and ability to interchange. They've got a great offensive line. Defense steps up to the plate. But they're really good. The levels of help that they seem to receive every week from these NFL officials, and I think that's something that
Did you see the Darnold one against the Colts? I don't know if you caught it while we're talking about ridiculous officiating. So a week after the face mask, Darnold got caught in the pocket and brought down, and they threw a flag for it. They then picked up the flag. It was a strip sack, fumble return for a touchdown.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and ignore the fact that it got right hooked in the jaw, which I'm pretty sure is meant to be against the rules and would probably have led to said person being incarcerated in Guantanamo Bay had he done to Patrice Mahomes. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it depends who was the president, and I mean, we can speak confidently that wouldn't have happened with the new president elect. To be fair, so I think.
Well, yeah, good point.
You'll probably get a bonus for chinning Darnold for that one. To be honest with you, I think that's it.
Yeah, well, he does like the UFC. Yeah, happy days.
In terms of what's coming up this week, just to finish off, I think we got the Bengals against the Ravens tonight on Thursday Night Football. I think that'll probably be a pretty good game.
Cracking.
Could be high scoring.
I hope the Bengals win, not to annoy Dan, not this time, but just simply because I want that division to stay alive. I love the story of Joe Burrow attempting to ride to the rescue because their start was so poor. I mean, at what point do you consider sacking the head coach and giving them one who might not start the wrong side of the 0-4 or whatever it is they seem to keep doing to themselves? They was only 0-2 last year, but the Bengals, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, are too good to be starting out that way and then struggling to make the playoffs.
Yeah, the Bengals are at 4-5. The Ravens are at 6-3. I think they're in Baltimore by the look of it. So I think that will be
Are they 6-3, not 5-3?
No, they're 6-3.
So that got 9. When's their bye coming up? Is it next
They've
week?
got a late one, not week 14, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And then with the game of the week has to be the game in Germany that's coming up, which is
mate, can't wait. I should have put Monday off.
Yeah, Liam's New York Giants against the powerhouse Carolina Panthers.
Wasn't that our comedy game that we predicted as like the potential Super Bowl? Like, what would be the best possible Super Bowl for comedy? And it's actually
I think it possibly was. And when you look at the records of both teams involved, 2-7, you look at the offenses of both teams involved. You look at the defenses of both teams involved. We could see the first 0-0 draw in NFL history, and it could happen in Germany. So, and if it does, it will be amusing for a number of reasons.
It'd be incredible. It will be incredible.
Other highlights of the weekend: we've got the Bills at the Colts. We've got the Broncos at the Chiefs. I think Pittsburgh against Washington will be a good game.
Yeah. That's probably the game I'm looking forward to the most, to be honest. I think Pittsburgh coming off their bye, their defence should be fully rested, a little bit of a break, and obviously Washington's been great. Daniels is still carrying that rib injury. I've got a slight...
Yeah.
I've got a definite leaning towards the Steelers winning this one, but I don't think anyone should count that against... I think this is this is another situation like the Trevor Lawrence one that we've discussed, where putting Daniels in the backfield with a rampage and TJ Watt that could absolutely destroy your tackles and potentially threaten the future of your franchise. That would lead to me as a Commanders offensive coordinator calling a very, very run heavy game. With limited risks and a very, very short passing game, and I think that's been the bit of the flavour for the Commanders over the last couple of weeks since Daniels picked up that injury, and that's what we saw a couple of weeks ago. They won basically on field goals. So, yeah, of course, and then obviously the late night game on Sundays, Detroit against the Texans. I think that'll probably be a pretty good game. To be fair, the Texans aren't as good as I thought they would be, though. I think it's fair to say. The injuries, I think Nico Collins, if he comes back, that could be huge for them. I'm not expecting it to be particularly close in terms of the Texans being able to stop the Lions from scoring. I mean, there's always a chance the Texans can potentially keep pace if Stroud has a great game and Dell and Collins are good. But Joe Mixon as well. He's been so good this year. He's best running back in the league so far outside of Barkley, which is great. Fair play to him. He was drafted the same year as Cook.
And then finally we've got Dave's Minnesota Vikings against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I say Dave's Minnesota Vikings. That's because I don't acknowledge Ollie
What time's that kicking off?
It's 6 o'clock on Sunday. The Vikings against the Jags.
Good. I mean, we've already mentioned it. I'm interested to see if Mac Jones starts. But yeah, I mean, the Vikings should win. We've had a full week to prepare. Didn't really bring in anyone to make a massive difference outside of the fact that we did get Cam Akers back and we managed to get hold of a functional left tackle to prop up the team. I'm kind of pleased we didn't sell out the future, because our future, well, it's JJ McCarthy, and next year we're going to be so much fun to watch. Every game I just keep thinking to myself, if JJ had been here, we'd have scored on that drive. JJ had been in, we'd have scored on that drive. JJ had been in, we'd have scored on that drive. JJ, yeah.
I think it's a lot to say. To be fair, I don't think you've been in. You've been a very potent offense this season, so I don't.
No. Look at some of the interceptions from Darnold. And the thing about JJ McCarthy is, as we know, that if he throws an interception, he then plays flawlessly for the rest of the game, based on the evidence of one pre-season game. But that's beside the point. Like, it might be a small sample size, but you know.
Here's one for you. If the Cowboys lose at home to the Eagles on Sunday, is that the end for Mike McCarthy?
Yeah.
I think it's already the end. I think he's a dead man walking for the end of the season.
I think that's the key. I don't think Jerry Jones wants to fire him in season, because who's he going to replace him with?
Yep.
If you're going to replace him with Zimmer. Zimmer's not a man who is showing a natural charisma to lead right now, and the defense is, if anything, doing even worse than the offense. So, you're probably right. The decision's probably already made. But if they get absolutely butchered at home, as soon as he feels that he can fire him and no one will judge him for the firing, he will do it. Because I feel like he wants him already gone, but he's actually slightly playing a strategic game in terms of making sure that he's waiting to find out what candidates are available, trying to bring people in for interview at the right time, and being able to say, look, I gave McCarthy, what would it be, 4 years? He gave Jason Garrett a ridiculous amount of time as well when he wasn't performing. So, I mean, like, you've got a job for 3 to 4 years. It's just your GM is an 81-year-old man who gets angry at radio hosts. So,
and with that, I think we can pretty much wrap it up for this week. I think one of the things we want to make sure that we make everyone aware of, next week we'll hopefully have an update on producer Bell's bin wars with his next door neighbour. That'll be quite an important piece to go through in a level of depth. I think it is one thing. We might see Ollie. Who knows? He could be doing another. He could be doing another overnight stay for an overnight trip for a hearing test, or so his mum can do a shoelace up for him or something like that.
Hey, he learned to tie his shoelaces. I was there
when he was 17 years old.
Last week.
When you're not here, you get rinsed. That's the Utter Punts way. So yeah.
Fair.
With that, Dave, any final words?
Have a good weekend, all. I hope that if you're not a Vikings fan, your team loses. Yes, all of you. Bye.
The Browns aren't playing, so I don't really care. So I'll catch you later, guys.